The dust of Kethvar had not been disturbed in 10,000 years. Dr. Claire Hammond stood at the entrance of the massive stone vault, her breathing mask fogging slightly in the thin atmosphere. Behind her, 3 Vraxian security officers shifted nervously, their 4 arms clutching plasma rifles that suddenly seemed very small. "Doctor, we should wait for the council observers," the lead Vraxian said. His name was Grell and his mandibles clicked with anxiety. Claire shook her head. "We've waited 3 months for permits. The vault is open now. I'm going in." The Titans had been dead for longer than most species had been spacefaring. Their homeworld was a monument to impossible strength. The doors to this vault alone weighed 50 tons each, and they had swung open at the touch of Claire's hand. That should have been her first warning. Inside, the air was cold and perfectly preserved. Emergency lights from Claire's equipment cast long shadows across a chamber the size of a cathedral. Pedestals lined the walls, each holding artifacts that museums across the galaxy would kill to possess. Titan armor that could stop starship weapons. Blades the length of a human body. Training weights that could crush a cargo shuttle. But Claire's eyes fixed on the back wall. The bow hung there on simple hooks, almost casual in its presentation. It was 12 feet long from tip to tip, carved from a single piece of dark wood that still gleamed after millennia. The string was some kind of synthetic fiber that hadn't degraded at all. Strange symbols covered the limbs of the bow, flowing script that predated most modern languages. "The warbow of Kethmore," Grell whispered. "The legends say it chose champions." Claire approached slowly. Her doctorate was in xenoarchaeology, specifically in Titan culture. She had spent 15 years studying their civilization, learning their language, understanding their society. The Titans had been the strongest species in galactic history. They stood 12 feet tall, with muscles dense enough to bend steel with bare hands. When they went extinct, they left behind weapons and tools that no modern species could use. This bow was one of those impossible artifacts. 17 species have tried to draw this bow, Claire said quietly, running her hand along the smooth wood. The strongest warriors from across the galaxy. None of them could even bend it. "Then why are we here?" one of the other Vraxians asked. Claire didn't answer. She was studying the bow's design. Something about it was different from other Titan weapons. The grip was asymmetric. The curve of the limbs was unusual. She had seen thousands of Titan artifacts, and this one didn't quite fit the pattern. "Dr. Hammond, please step away from the artifact," Grell said. "Council regulations require." Claire lifted the bow from its hooks. The Vraxians raised their weapons immediately. "Put it down." But Claire barely heard them. The bow was heavy, yes, perhaps 80 pounds. But it wasn't impossibly heavy. She had carried equipment that weighed more. What shocked her was how perfectly balanced it felt. The weight distributed itself naturally across her arms. "It's not designed for raw strength," she muttered. "What?" Grell lowered his rifle slightly. Claire turned the bow over in her hands. The symbols were clearer now. She could read ancient Titan script, and these words were instructions. Not warnings. Not boasts. Instructions. "Plant your feet shoulder width," she read aloud. "Rotate from the core. Let the shoulders do the work, not the arms. This is about leverage, not power." "Doctor, no one has drawn that bow in?" Claire wasn't listening anymore. She had spent 15 years studying how Titans moved, how they fought, how they built things. Everyone assumed Titan weapons required Titan strength. But what if that was wrong? What if Titan weapons required Titan technique? She positioned herself the way the instructions described. Left foot forward, right foot back. She gripped the bow in her left hand, feeling for the balance point. Her right hand found the string. "Dr. Hammond, I am ordering you to stop." Claire pulled. The bow didn't move. For a moment she thought she had been wrong. Then she adjusted her stance, remembering more of what she had learned. Titans didn't pull with their arms. They rotated their entire upper body, using their shoulders and back as one connected system. Humans had similar anatomy. Complex shoulder joints that could rotate in ways most species couldn't match. She tried again, this time engaging her whole body. The bow creaked. The Vraxians stepped back in shock. Claire felt the resistance, enormous and challenging but not impossible. She pulled harder, rotating her shoulders, feeling muscles in her back she rarely used begin to strain. The ancient string stretched. The limbs of the bow began to bend. "Impossible," Grell breathed. Claire's arms shook with effort. Sweat ran down her face despite the cold air. But the bow continued to bend. Inch by inch the string drew back. She could feel the enormous potential energy building in the weapon, thousands of pounds of force waiting to be released. She held it there for 3 seconds. the bow fully drawn. A human woman holding a weapon that 17 species of warriors had failed to even budge. Then she carefully relaxed the string and lowered the bow. The chamber was silent except for Claire's heavy breathing. The Vraxians stared at her like she had just turned water into wine. Grell's mandibles hung open in disbelief. "Get a message to the Galactic Council," Claire said quietly. "Tell them we need to rethink everything we know about Titan artifacts." "How?" Grell finally managed. "Vraxian warriors have 4 arms. We can bench press a hover car." "How did you?" "It's not about strength," Claire said, looking at the bow with new understanding. "It's about biomechanics. You evolved for lifting and pushing. Linear force. Humans evolved for throwing. For rotation. Our shoulders work differently." She paused. "The Titans evolved the same way." She hung the bow back on its hooks, her hands still trembling slightly from the effort. The symbols on its surface seemed to glow in the emergency lights, but that was probably just her imagination. "Send the message," she repeated. "And someone start recording everything. We just changed galactic history." Grell activated his communication device with shaking hands. Claire stood in front of the bow, her mind racing through implications. If she was right about this, it meant Titan weapons weren't impossible to use. They were just designed for specific biomechanics. Biomechanics that humans shared. The vault suddenly felt much smaller. Behind her, emergency lights flickered across dozens of other Titan artifacts. Weapons and tools that everyone had assumed were useless relics. Maybe they weren't relics at all. Maybe they were just waiting for the right species to claim them. The video had been playing on loop for 6 hours across every major galactic news network. Claire sat in her temporary quarters on the research station, watching herself draw the Titan warbow for what felt like the 100th time. The footage was grainy, taken from Grell's helmet camera, but it was clear enough. Clear enough to start a galaxy-wide controversy. Her communication terminal buzzed constantly. Requests for interviews. Demands for explanations. Accusations. She ignored most of them, but she couldn't ignore the one marked with the Galactic Council seal. "Dr. Hammond, you are required to attend an emergency session in 3 days," the message read. "Bring the artifact. Bring evidence. Prepare to defend your claims." Claire rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept since the vault. Her mind kept running through the biomechanics, checking and rechecking her theory. It made sense. It had to make sense. But the galaxy wasn't ready to accept that humans could do something the strongest species couldn't. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Grell entered, his expression grave. "You need to see this," he said, activating a holographic display. The image showed Ambassador Vrel of the Vraxian Empire, speaking to a packed council chamber. His 4 arms gestured dramatically as he spoke. "This is obvious fraud," Vrel declared. The bow was clearly damaged. Or replaced with a replica. No species weaker than Vraxians could possibly draw a Titan weapon. This human has deceived the academic community for personal glory. Claire felt her jaw tighten. That's absurd. The bow was authenticated. Multiple sensors confirmed it's over 10,000 years old. "He's not alone," Grell said quietly. "The Korthian Dominion issued a statement this morning. They claim you must have used hidden mechanical assistance. The Zelvan Confederacy agrees. Even some human politicians are calling it impossible." "Of course they are," Claire muttered. She stood and paced the small room. "Everyone's been told for centuries that Titan artifacts are beyond us. No one wants to believe a human broke that barrier with just her body." "Can you do it again?" Grell asked. Claire stopped pacing. "What? Can you draw the bow again? In front of witnesses? Without any equipment or preparation?" Grell's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Because if you can't, this all falls apart. Your career, human credibility in the academic community, everything." Claire thought about the moment in the vault. The way the bow had felt in her hands. The tremendous resistance, yes, but also the way it had responded to proper technique. She had drawn it once. But that didn't mean she could do it reliably. Her shoulders still ached from the effort. What if it had been adrenaline? What if she couldn't repeat it? "I can do it," she said, sounding more confident than she felt. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Claire spent hours reviewing footage of herself drawing the bow, analyzing every movement. She practiced the motion without the weapon, feeling how her body moved, understanding the rotation of her shoulders and the engagement of her back muscles. She also researched other species' anatomy. Vraxians were incredibly strong, but their 4 arms were designed for different purposes. Upper arms for fine manipulation, lower arms for heavy lifting. Their shoulder joints were ball and socket, same as humans, but they didn't have the same range of rotation. They pushed and pulled in straight lines. Corthians were even stronger, their entire bodies covered in dense muscle. But they were built like living tanks. They could crush and smash, but they couldn't throw. They had never needed to. Humans were different. Millions of years of evolution had given them shoulders that could rotate nearly 360 degrees. They could throw spears, swing clubs, and yes, draw bows with compound motion. They used the entire upper body as a single lever system. The Titans, according to every text Claire had studied, had the same advantages. They weren't just strong. They were precise. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of species. Claire stood in the center, the warbow of Kethmore resting on an examination table beside her. Cameras from every major network pointed at her. Security scanners surrounded the area, ready to detect any hidden devices. Ambassador Vrel sat in the Vraxian section, his forearms crossed in obvious skepticism. Representatives from dozens of other species filled the seats, all watching her with varying degrees of doubt. The council speaker, an elderly Zelvan with silver skin, activated her microphone. "Dr. Hammond, you stand accused of fraudulent claims regarding Titan artifacts. You will now demonstrate your alleged ability, under controlled conditions, with full sensor monitoring." Claire nodded. Her mouth was dry. Her hands were sweating. This was nothing like the vault. There, she had been curious, experimenting. Here, the entire galaxy was watching, waiting for her to fail. "Before I begin," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I request that a volunteer attempt to draw the bow first. To establish a baseline." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Vrel stood immediately. "I volunteer." Of course he did, Claire thought. He wanted to prove humans were weak. Vrel descended to the chamber floor, his massive frame making Claire look small by comparison. He approached the bow confidently, examined it briefly, then gripped it with all four arms. The room fell silent. Vrel pulled. His muscles bulged. His mandibles ground together with effort. The bow didn't move. Not even slightly. He adjusted his grip, trying different positions, different amounts of force. Nothing worked. After 2 full minutes he stepped back, breathing hard. "The artifact is clearly designed for beings of impossible strength," he declared. "No living species can draw it." "May I?" Claire asked. The speaker nodded. Claire approached the bow. Up close, away from the vault's mystique, it looked even more impossible. The wood was dark and hard, the string thick as her thumb. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, could hear the faint hum of recording equipment. She picked up the bow, positioned her feet. Left hand gripping the center, right hand finding the string. She took a deep breath, remembered the instructions carved into the bow surface, remembered 15 years of studying how Titans moved. She pulled. The bow resisted just like before. But Claire engaged her shoulders, rotated from her core, let her entire upper body work as one mechanism. The string began to move. The limbs began to bend. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Claire's arms shook. Her back muscles burned. But the bow continued to bend, inch by steady inch. She pulled it to full draw, the string touching her cheek, and held it there. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then she carefully released the tension and lowered the bow. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. Cameras flashed. Ambassador Vrel stared at her like she had just performed magic. The speaker pounded her gavel for silence. When the noise finally died down, she spoke slowly. "The sensors confirm no mechanical assistance. No hidden devices. Dr. Hammond, how is this possible?" Claire looked directly at the cameras. "Because the Titans didn't build this bow for the strongest species. They built it for the smartest. They built it for species who understood leverage, rotation, and biomechanics. They built it for species like themselves." She paused. "Species like humans?" The demonstration had silenced many critics, but not all of them. Ambassador Vrel refused to accept what he had witnessed with his own eyes. 3 days after Claire's successful draw in the council chamber, he filed an official challenge. "One success proves nothing," his statement read. "Dr. Hammond could have practiced with a modified replica. The bow could have been weakened during transport. I demand a second demonstration with independent verification of the artifact's authenticity." Claire sat in her quarters, reading the challenge on her data pad. Grell stood nearby, his mandibles clicking with frustration. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You proved it already. The sensors confirmed everything." "He's not going to stop until he understands how I did it," Claire replied. And honestly, I don't blame him. If someone told me a Vraxian could do something humans physically couldn't, I'd want proof too. So what do? Claire set down the pad and looked at her friend. I teach them. I show them exactly why humans can draw the bow and they can't. I make them understand the biomechanics. 2 days later, the council chamber was packed again. But this time, Claire had requested special equipment. A holographic display system stood beside her, capable of showing detailed anatomical models. The warbow of Kethmore rested on its table, but Claire also had something new, a smaller practice bow human-sized made of modern materials. The council speaker called the session to order. Dr. Hammond, Ambassador Vrel has challenged your previous demonstration. You may proceed. Claire activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional model of a human skeleton appeared, slowly rotating in the air. Before I draw the bow again, she began, I want to show you why I can do it. This is about anatomy, not magic. The image zoomed in on the shoulder joint. Humans have what's called a ball and socket shoulder joint. So do Vraxians. So do most bipedal species. But not all ball and socket joints work the same way. She manipulated the model, making the arm rotate in a full circle. Human shoulders can rotate almost 360 degrees. We evolved this ability over millions of years because we're throwing species. We threw spears at prey. We threw rocks at enemies. Our entire upper body evolved to generate rotational force. The display changed to show a Vraxian skeleton. Vraxians have 4 arms with ball and socket joints. But watch what happens when they try to rotate. The model showed Vraxian arms moving. They could push, pull, and lift with incredible strength. But their rotation was limited, perhaps 180 degrees at most. Their shoulders were designed for different tasks. You evolved for climbing and manipulation, Claire continued. Your upper arms handle delicate work. Your lower arms provide strength. It's an excellent design for your needs. But it's not optimized for throwing or drawing bows. Ambassador Vrel stood. This is a theory. Theories are not proof. You're right, Claire said. So let me prove it. She picked up the practice bow, the modern one she had brought. This bow requires about 40 pounds of force to draw. Any adult human can do it with basic training. Ambassador Vrel, would you try? Vrel approached cautiously. He took the smaller bow and attempted to draw it. He managed to pull the string back, but his form was awkward, using all 4 arms to compensate for his limited shoulder rotation. I can draw it, he said triumphantly. Yes, with 4 arms and considerable effort, Claire replied. Now watch me. She took the bow and drew it smoothly with just her right arm, using the rotational motion she had described. The movement looked effortless compared to Vrel's struggle. The difference becomes more pronounced with heavier draw weights, she explained. The Titan bow requires approximately 200 pounds of force at full draw. My rotational advantage means I can use my entire back and shoulder system. You're limited to linear arm strength. The holographic display changed again, this time showing a Titan skeleton. The chamber fell silent as everyone stared at the ancient anatomy. The Titans had shoulder joints almost identical to humans, Claire said quietly. Look at the range of motion. Look at the attachment points for muscles. They were throwing species too. Probably used ranged weapons long before they developed technology. She walked to the warbow and lifted it. This weapon wasn't designed for raw strength. It was designed for someone with Titan biomechanics. Someone who could rotate their shoulders properly. Someone who understood leverage. Then why didn't the Korthians succeed? Someone called from the gallery. They're stronger than Vraxians. Claire nodded. I anticipated that question. Could we have a Korthian volunteer? A massive Korthian warrior descended to the floor. His species was built like living tanks with muscles so dense they could punch through steel walls. He approached the Titan bow with confidence. Claire stood aside. Please try to draw it. The Korthian gripped the bow with both hands. His entire body tensed. Muscles bulged under his armor. His face contorted with effort. The bow didn't budge. Thank you, Claire said gently. The Korthian stepped back, looking confused and frustrated. Claire activated the holographic display again, showing a Korthian skeleton. Your species evolved for ramming and impact. Your shoulders are incredibly strong, but they're fused for stability. You can't rotate them more than a few degrees. Your spine is rigid to support charging attacks. It's perfect for your combat style, but wrong for this weapon. She took position with the Titan bow once more. The Titans built this bow for species like themselves. Species with flexible spines, rotating shoulders, and the intelligence to use leverage instead of just power. Claire drew the bow slowly this time, narrating each step. Plant feet for stability. Engage core muscles for rotation. Pull with the back, not the arms. Let the shoulders do their evolutionary job. The bow bent. The string drew back. She held it at full draw for 5 seconds this time, longer than before. Then she carefully released it. The chamber erupted in discussion. Scientists in the gallery were furiously taking notes. Some representatives were arguing with their neighbors. Ambassador Vrel sat motionless, staring at Claire with an unreadable expression. The council speaker raised her hand for silence. Dr. Hammond, are you suggesting that humans are biomechanically superior to other species? No, Claire said firmly. I'm suggesting that different species evolved different advantages. Vraxians have 4 arms and incredible dexterity. Corthians have unmatched impact strength. Humans have rotational joint systems. None is objectively better. They're just different. She paused, looking around the chamber. The Titans had similar anatomy to humans. That's not superiority. It's just convergent evolution. 2 species, separated by millions of years and thousands of light years, developed similar solutions to similar problems. Ambassador Vrel finally stood. His voice was quiet when he spoke. I withdraw my challenge. The demonstration is conclusive. The words seemed to cost him something, but he said them clearly. Other representatives began to murmur agreement. The evidence was overwhelming. Claire carefully placed the Titan bow back on its table. Her shoulders ached from 2 demonstrations in one day, but she felt satisfied. She hadn't just proven she could draw the bow. She had taught the galaxy why. The council speaker made it official. The record will reflect that Dr. Hammond's claims are verified. Humanity possesses biomechanical compatibility with Titan artifacts. This session is adjourned. As representatives filed out, several approached Claire with questions about human anatomy and evolution. She answered each one patiently, explaining the science behind what they had witnessed. Grell waited until the crowd dispersed before approaching. You changed their minds, he said. That's rare in galactic politics. Claire smiled tiredly. I just showed them the truth. Sometimes that's enough. The weeks following Claire's demonstration brought an avalanche of research opportunities. The Galactic Council granted her unlimited access to Titan sites across 12 worlds. Museums opened their vaults. Private collectors contacted her with artifacts they had hidden for generations. Everyone wanted to know if their Titan relics might actually be usable. Claire stood in her expanded laboratory on the research station, surrounded by Titan artifacts that had been deemed impossible for millennia. Swords too heavy to lift, armor too large to wear, tools whose purposes had been forgotten, and books. Hundreds of books that no one had properly translated because everyone assumed they were religious texts or poetry. They weren't poetry. They were instruction manuals. Listen to this, Claire said to her research team. She had expanded her staff to include specialists from 6 different species. Her assistant, a young human named Peter, looked up from his data pad. 2 Zelvan linguists stopped their work. Even Grell, who had requested a permanent transfer to her team, turned his attention to her. Claire read from a tablet displaying ancient Titan script. The strength of the body is meaningless without the wisdom of the mind. A warrior who relies on muscle alone will fall to one who understands leverage, timing, and technique. That's from the Codex of Kethvar, one of the Zelvan linguists said. We always thought it was philosophical. It's not philosophy, Claire replied. It's their actual training doctrine. She pulled up another text. Here's another one. The young student believes the heaviest weapon wins the fight. The master knows the precisely wielded weapon wins the fight. Peter frowned. But the Titans were the strongest species in galactic history. Why would they need to emphasize technique? Claire smiled. That's exactly the question I've been asking. And I think I found the answer. She activated a holographic display showing a Titan skeleton next to a human skeleton, both scaled to the same size for comparison. Look at the bone density. Titan bones were 3 times denser than human bones. Their muscle fibers were twice as efficient. A Titan could probably lift a small car without much effort. So they were strong, Grell said. We knew this. But look at their joints, Claire continued, highlighting the shoulders, elbows, and wrists. See how similar they are to human joints? The same range of motion. The same rotational capability. The same fine motor control. She pulled up another image, this time showing Titan cave paintings that had been discovered decades ago. We've had these images for years but never understood them. Everyone assumed they showed Titans fighting monsters or each other. The paintings showed Titan figures in various poses, each holding different weapons or tools. Claire zoomed in on one particular figure. "This isn't a battle scene," she said. "It's a training diagram. See the angles of the body? The position of the feet? This is teaching proper form for throwing a spear." The team leaned closer. Once Claire pointed it out, it was obvious. The Titan in the painting wasn't frozen in combat. It was demonstrating technique, like illustrations in a modern martial arts manual. "They trained," Peter said slowly. "Just like humans train." "Exactly." Claire brought up more images. "Here's one showing proper sword grip. Here's one about stance and balance. And this one," she highlighted a particularly detailed painting, "shows breathing techniques for sustained effort." One of the Zelvan linguists activated her own terminal. "If that's true, then we need to retranslate everything. Texts we thought were mythology might be training records. Stories we thought were legends might be historical accounts of their methods." "Already started," Claire said. She pulled up dozens of documents. "I've been working through the archives all week. The Titans didn't just value strength. They built an entire civilization around the idea that technique multiplies strength. That knowledge and skill matter more than raw power." Grell's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "This changes our understanding of why they went extinct." "Does it?" Claire asked. "We always assumed they died out because they were too specialized, too dependent on high-gravity worlds, too physically imposing to adapt when their sun began to die." Grell paused. "But if they valued adaptability and technique, why didn't they survive?" Claire had been wondering the same thing. She pulled up astronomical data from the Titan homeworld. Their sun went supernova. It wasn't a slow death that gave them time to evacuate. It was a catastrophic event that destroyed their entire system in hours. "Bad luck," Peter said quietly. "The worst luck," Claire agreed. "A civilization that valued intelligence and technique, wiped out by random cosmic chance. But they knew it was coming. Look at this." She displayed text from what appeared to be one of the last Titan records ever written. "We leave our works for those who come after. May they be worthy. May they understand that true strength lies not in the body, but in the mind that guides it." The laboratory fell silent. Everyone stared at the ancient words. "They knew they were dying," one of the Zelvan linguists whispered. "They left everything behind as a test." Claire nodded. "I think they wanted to see which species would figure it out. Which ones would look past the size and weight of their artifacts and understand the principles behind them." She walked to a table covered in Titan tools. A hammer that weighed 60 pounds. Surgical instruments designed for 12-foot hands. A writing stylus the size of a human forearm. Every species that studied these objects made the same mistake. They saw the scale and assumed only Titan strength could use them. But scale isn't the point. She picked up the hammer, gripping it with both hands. It was heavy, yes, but balanced. She could feel the center of mass, could understand how a Titan would have held it. "You don't lift this hammer with your arms. You let gravity do the work. You guide it with technique." Peter activated a scanning device. "We should test everything. Every artifact we thought was useless. If the Titans designed for technique rather than strength, humans might be able to use dozens of their tools." "Not just humans," Claire said. "Other species too, once they understand the principles. The Titans didn't leave these things for one specific species. They left them for anyone smart enough to figure it out." Grell approached the table and picked up a Titan blade. It was enormous in his hands, designed for someone 3 times his size. But when he adjusted his grip, following the balance point Claire had described, his expression changed. "I can feel it," he said. "The way it's supposed to move. It's not about overpowering the weight. It's about working with it." "Exactly." Claire felt a surge of excitement. This was bigger than just drawing a bow. This was understanding an entire civilization's philosophy. The Titans were strong, but they didn't worship strength. They worshipped mastery, skill, the perfect application of force. She pulled up the final document she had been studying, one that had given her chills when she first translated it. "This is from their greatest warrior, someone named Kethmore. The same Titan who made the warbow." The team gathered around as she read. "Strength fades. Muscle weakens with age. But technique once learned never leaves. A warrior's true power is not in how much they can lift, but in how well they can move. Teach your children not to be strong but to be precise. Not to be mighty but to be efficient. For in precision and efficiency lies the path to true mastery." Peter looked at the warbow of Kethmore, still resting in its protective case across the room. "That's why the bow requires technique. It's not a weapon. It's a lesson." "It's both," Claire said. But yes, the lesson matters more than the weapon itself. Kethmore was trying to teach future generations what the Titans had learned over millions of years of evolution. That intelligence and technique will always triumph over brute force. The implications were staggering. Thousands of Titan artifacts in museums across the galaxy might actually be functional. Training equipment. Educational tools. Weapons designed not for the strongest but for the smartest. "We need to publish this," one of the Zelvan linguists said. "The entire academic community needs to see these translations." Claire nodded. "Agreed. But first we verify. We test the artifacts. We prove that Titan technology was meant to be used, not just displayed." She looked around at her team. "We're going to rewrite galactic history. We're going to show everyone what the Titans really were." "What were they?" Grell asked. Claire smiled. "Teachers. They were teachers who left behind the greatest classroom in the galaxy. And finally, after 10,000 years, someone's ready to learn." 6 months after Claire first drew the warbow of Kethmore, the Galactic Council convened for a historic vote. The chamber was packed with representatives from every major species, along with hundreds of observers, scientists, and journalists. Claire sat in the witness section, wearing formal attire that felt uncomfortable after months in research clothing. The council speaker stood at her podium, her silver Zelvan skin gleaming under the chamber lights. "We are here to decide the future of Titan heritage sites. Dr. Claire Hammond has submitted a proposal that would fundamentally change how we preserve and study Titan civilization." The floor recognizes Dr. Hammond. Claire walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She had prepared a speech, but looking at the assembled representatives, she decided to speak from the heart instead. 6 months ago, I drew a bow that 17 species had failed to draw," she began. "I didn't do it because I'm special. I did it because I understood what the Titans were trying to teach us. They didn't leave their artifacts as monuments to impossible strength. They left them as lessons in technique, intelligence, and adaptability." She activated a holographic display showing Titan sites across the galaxy. "Right now, we treat these places like graveyards. We seal them off. We preserve them under glass. We tell ourselves we're protecting galactic heritage, but really, we're just admitting we don't understand what we're protecting." The display changed to show images of Titan artifacts gathering dust in museum vaults. The Titans didn't want their legacy locked away. They wanted it used. They wanted future species to learn from them, to understand their techniques, to carry forward their philosophy. Ambassador Vrel stood. Over the past months, he had become one of Claire's unlikely allies. Dr. Hammond proposes that humanity be granted keeper status over all Titan sites. This is unprecedented. No single species has ever been given such authority over another civilization's heritage. "I'm not asking for ownership," Claire clarified. "I'm asking for stewardship. Humans would maintain the sites, study the artifacts, and most importantly, teach other species how to use Titan technology properly. We would make this knowledge available to everyone." A Korthian representative activated his microphone. "Why should humans have this role? What makes your species qualified?" Claire had expected this question. "Because we share the Titans' biomechanics. Because we can demonstrate their techniques. Because we've proven we can understand their philosophy." She paused. "But mostly because we're willing to do the work. We're willing to translate every text, test every artifact, and teach every species that wants to learn." The council speaker called for testimony. Scientists who had worked with Claire spoke about her research. Grell described how she had changed his understanding of strength and technique. Even some who had initially doubted her now supported the proposal. The debate lasted for hours. Some representatives worried about giving humans too much influence. Others questioned whether the Titans would have wanted their sites actively used rather than preserved. But slowly the mood in the chamber shifted. Finally, the council speaker called for a vote. "All in favor of granting humanity keeper status over Titan heritage sites?" The voting board lit up. Green lights appeared across the display, representing species after species approving the proposal. When the count finished, the result was overwhelming. 73% in favor. "The motion passes," the speaker announced. "Humanity is hereby granted keeper status over all Titan sites, artifacts, and records. Dr. Claire Hammond is appointed as the first chief keeper, with authority to establish research teams and educational programs." The chamber erupted in applause. Claire stood in the center, momentarily overwhelmed. She had hoped for approval, but this level of support was unexpected. After the session ended, Claire returned to her laboratory. Her team had been watching the broadcast and greeted her with congratulations. But Claire was already thinking about the work ahead. "We need to establish a training center," she said, pulling up plans she had been developing for weeks. "Somewhere other species can come to learn Titan techniques. Not just how to use their artifacts but how to think like they thought." Peter nodded enthusiastically. "I've been looking at potential locations. The Titan homeworld has a research station that could be expanded. It would be symbolic too, teaching their methods on their own world." "Perfect," Claire said. "Start making arrangements. We'll need instructors from multiple species. This can't just be humans teaching everyone else. We need Vraxians who understand their own biomechanics, Korthians who can explain their limitations, Zelvans who can translate nuance." Over the next 3 months, the Titan Heritage Center took shape. The old research station on Kethvar was transformed into a state-of-the-art facility. Training halls were built using Titan architectural principles. Libraries were established to house translated texts. Workshops were equipped with replica Titan tools that species could practice with safely. The first class of students arrived on a cold morning. 20 individuals from 15 different species, all eager to learn. Claire stood at the entrance to greet them, wearing a ceremonial sash woven with Titan symbols. Behind her, mounted on the wall of the main hall, hung the warbow of Kethmore. "Welcome," she said to the assembled students. "You're here because you want to understand the Titans. But understanding them means more than studying their history. It means learning their techniques, adopting their philosophy, and carrying their legacy forward." She led them into the main hall. The students stared at the warbow with awe and nervousness. "Before the end of your training," Claire continued, "each of you will attempt to draw this bow. Not because you need to prove your strength but because the attempt will teach you about leverage, biomechanics, and the limits of your own species' anatomy. Some of you will succeed. Some won't. Both outcomes are valuable lessons." A young Vraxian raised one of her 4 hands. "Will we learn to use other Titan weapons?" "You'll learn to use whatever your body allows," Claire replied. The Titans didn't expect everyone to be able to use everything they made. They expected intelligent beings to understand their own capabilities and limitations. That understanding is the real lesson. The training program lasted 6 months. Students learned ancient Titan language, studied their philosophy, and practiced with their tools. Claire taught biomechanics using holographic models. Grell instructed on proper form and stance. Peter led historical seminars on Titan culture and values. Slowly the students began to understand. The Vraxian discovered she could use Titan precision instruments that required fine motor control. A Korthian learned to wield a Titan hammer by using his massive strength efficiently rather than wastefully. A small Zelvan found she could operate Titan surgical tools by understanding leverage points. On graduation day, each student attempted to draw the warbow of Kethmore. 3 succeeded, 2 humans and surprisingly, a Vraxian who had spent months studying rotational mechanics and practicing flexibility exercises to extend her shoulder range. Claire watched with pride as the Vraxian held the bow at full draw, her 4 arms working in perfect coordination to achieve what Ambassador Vrel had once declared impossible. "The Titans were right," the Vraxian said, carefully releasing the string. "Technique matters more than strength." After the ceremony, Claire stood alone in the main hall, looking up at the warbow. It had started everything. One moment of curiosity in an ancient vault had led to all of this. A new understanding of Titan civilization, humanity's role as keepers of their legacy, and a training center that would teach their philosophy to future generations. Grell entered quietly, standing beside her. "You changed the galaxy," he said. Claire shook her head. "The Titans changed the galaxy. I just figured out what they were trying to tell us." "What were they trying to tell us?" Claire smiled. "That we're all worthy. Every species has unique advantages. The key is understanding those advantages and using them wisely. Strength alone never built a great civilization. Intelligence, technique, and the willingness to learn, those are what matter." She looked around the hall, imagining it filled with future students from species that hadn't even joined the galactic community yet. The Titans had left their knowledge for anyone worthy of learning it. For 10,000 years, that knowledge had waited. Now it was finally being shared. The warbow hung on the wall, no longer an impossible relic but a symbol of what could be achieved through understanding and effort. It represented humanity's place in the galaxy not as the strongest or the oldest, but as teachers and keepers of ancient wisdom. Claire touched the ceremonial sash she wore, feeling the weight of responsibility and opportunity. The Titans had trusted that someday someone would understand. That someone would be worthy of their legacy. After 10,000 years of waiting, humanity had proven worthy. and the lesson would continue for generations to come.